Hey, Soul Sister, welcome back to another episode. Today, we're diving into a conversation that so many of us face at some point in our lives, knowing when it's time to pivot. Maybe it's walking away from a job, shifting your career, or even letting go of a business that once felt like your dream. Pivoting can feel scary, heavy, and full of unknowns, but it can also be the most powerful step toward alignment and freedom. In this episode, we're sharing the signs that it may be time for a change, the fears that often hold us back, and our own stories of trusting the nudge to step into what's next. So, if you've been feeling that whisper in your soul that says, there's more for you, this episode is for you. Let's get into it.
Oh my gosh, I love this topic so much. I
Right?
can relate to it so much in my life, and I wanna share that part of my current journey too with pivoting. And I know from previous episodes we've talked about this, I left my career in wedding photography, which I've been doing for 8 years, and after knowing that I had to leave, I felt like there was no clear-cut sign that I had to leave. It was nothing that happened. There was nothing that someone did to me or it's something that really, was catastrophic. It was more like this inner knowing, you know? And if some people can relate to that, sometimes you get that inner knowing that this job or this career or this experience or these people, whatever that looks like for you, doesn't fit anymore. It's like trying on clothes and you've put on weight or lost weight or whatever, and you put it on, it just doesn't fit the same, right? So I feel like it's like describing that experience in your life. And I know for me, it's like the monotony in doing a job sometimes can get to that point where I'm like, all right, I need a change. I need a challenge. I need something that lights me up differently because you get so used to doing certain things in your life. And if you no longer have this like challenge, your passion starts to dissipate or whatever, right? It just goes away. So a lot of people can relate to pivoting or wanting to pivot because they're stuck in that monotony or they're stuck in that place where it just doesn't light them up, right? So what is it for you, Whitley, in your life? Because I know I've gone through a major pivot in my life and I'm still navigating that, but are there some areas in your life that you've pivoted and how did you know that you needed to pivot?
Yeah. I think that's a really the biggest thing. The biggest question is how do you know when it's time to pivot? And I think there's been many times in my journey where I have felt like that call to pivot. But I would say going back, I'm going to use the example of when I was running the networking group that I had back in New Brunswick. And when I was running that, I ran that for about just over 3 years. And it was like one of the biggest things that I really wanted. Like I was lit up about it, when I first started this networking, like women's network. When I first started that, it was like my little baby and like growing it from the ground up. And then when it grew and, I had women from literally all over the globe who were part of this network. Now I think I attached my identity to it in a lot of
Mhm.
ways. So I think that when those feelings of feeling that it was time to close the door, I think I denied it a lot, but some of those
Mhm.
signs for me and knowing it was time to pivot and move on to something else came in the form of I think when you first start doing something, you feel super lit up and you're excited and like you just want to pour all your time into it. And the moment that I didn't feel as excited and lit up and passionate as I once did, I knew like that was my first sign. Like it's
Right.
normal to feel like unmotivated at times, but when that lack of motivation is constant, I think that's a really big telltale sign that it may be time to like check in with yourself and see where you're aligning. And I think the second part to that was through my journey of building that network and pouring into it. I was also growing as a person, and you're always going to grow in whatever it is that you're doing. So whether you're in a job, whether you're in, your dream career, your dream business, you're constantly it's a vehicle for you to grow and evolve as a human being. And I think that at the moment when you stop feeling like you're growing, when you stop feeling like you're being challenged,
Yeah.
that's also a sign to check in to say, "Hey, is there something more for me? Have I achieved all that I can within this? And if not, am I still excited about staying in this vehicle to continue to grow?" And if you ask yourself, actually, I think I've done all the growing I need to do in this vehicle. That's also another sign that maybe it's time to pivot and your higher self is calling you into like that next chapter.
Yeah.
So I think that was something else for me within the network that I was building out. I had done
Yeah.
so many different things and I challenged myself in so many ways and I grew in so many different ways. But there was a part of me that was like, hey, you're ready to step into a next level version, but you can't hold on to this anymore because this is going to prevent you from being able to go to the next level. And that was scary because I think when we think about how much we tie our identities to our work, our jobs, our businesses, it's very, very difficult and it can be so scary to let go and to let go to go into something that hasn't even quite taken shape yet. Because it's like when if you think about like Tarzan in the jungle and you're swinging on the ropes, right? If you're like swinging on a rope, in order to get to the next rope, you've got to let go of the one that you're holding on to. And that's kind of what it feels like when you are pivoting into something new. It's like you don't want to let go of the rope, right? Because you're already holding on to it. It's familiar.
Yeah. That's such a good analogy.
But you have to let go in order to go to the next rope.
You have to
But
create space too, right?
that's how
Yeah.
you journey, right? You have to be
Mhm.
willing to let go of what is no longer serving you in order to get to the next. So I think, like, for me, those were definitely some of the bigger signs.
Yeah.
But what about for yourself, Share?
Well, I think also, like, tying back to, you know, knowing that you have to let go of something, but the fears come up, you know? And I think the big fears for me were disappointing others. So at the end of the day, all of us want to be fulfilled in our jobs. We want to be happy in what we're doing, right? But what stops a lot of us from moving to that place is letting go out of fear of disappointing others, fear of the unknown, fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of, money, like not being stable. There's so many things that tie into that because we've been programmed to believe that we need to hustle and do the job even if you don't like it because it makes money, because you're responsible for your family. You're responsible for, taking care of everybody. And I think when you can let go of that and know that your happiness does matter
Mhm.
and your happiness matters first before everyone else, you can start to let go of the opinions of others in what you're doing. Because at the end of the day, a lot of people are nosy. They want to know what you're doing and they want to get in your business. Like, why is she leaving this job? It's so successful. Why is she just doing this to her family? Blah, blah, blah. Like, there's so many things that battle with you in that moment of that decision when you make it. And I know I've always struggled with that part, is just letting go of that, feeling of disappointing others, that feeling of like, I'm a failure if I let this
Yeah.
go because I've worked so hard at it. When you work so hard at something, it feels like it's all for nothing sometimes, but it's not. When you let go of something, you can take away the lessons that you've learned in those experiences into your future endeavors because nothing is for nothing. And I think when we let go of that we're supposed to evolve, we're supposed to change, we're supposed to grow, we're supposed to like challenge ourselves. That's what the meaning of life is. It's not about hustling. It's not about having the job that pays enough money to support you. At the end of the day, you're just crying in your room because you're so unhappy. It requires a lot of courage. It requires
Yeah.
a lot of self reflection, self love, and letting go of other people's opinions and judgment on you. And also, it requires a lot of trust. It
Yeah.
requires a lot of surrender. And we've done that. You and I have done that. When you can surrender to the next outcome without knowing what that outcome is, the universe surprises us in so many ways. And I remember doing this, like I had a cake shop before I was a photographer. And I remember very distinctly, very, very distinctly that I was in my kitchen, I was by the oven, and I was baking a million cupcakes monotonously every single day. I was like, put this in the oven, take it out, ice it, sell it, bring it in. It was so monotonous. And I forgot why I started doing this in the first place. Because when I started, I was starting for the art, for the decoration. I wasn't starting to have a job that created monotony. And
Mhm.
so when I started to feel that, there was no challenge. I said to the universe, I said, "Hey, just send me the next thing." And I remember it. I was in the kitchen by the oven. I said, "Send me the next thing." And I'm waiting and I'm ready. That's all I said. There was no time. There was no like, by this date, nothing. Just send me the next thing. And then all of a sudden, this opportunity came up where my sister in law had a baby and she said, "Do you want to take his picture?" Because I was taking pictures of my cakes at the time. So I knew how to use a camera. And I said, "Sure." And that feeling that you get when you first start doing something or getting curious about something was the feeling I had, was the I'm obsessed. I need to learn more. I need to get curious. I need to pack up and leave my job and do this thing. I mean, it did end up like that, but it was time, right? It was just like, all right, get curious, start doing it. Then came the moment where I remember this moment where I was in the car driving home one day and I was so exhausted from working that cake shop and doing photography on the side that I decided I'm going to call you and I say, "Hey, Whitley, I'm closing my bakery. I'm done."
I
Right.
still remember
And
that. Yeah.
you do. I was in my driveway. And those moments you remember because they're such transformative moments for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they are moments of just surrender. They're moments of like, I just know I have to do this. And I don't know why, but I have to. And when I did that, it was the best decision I made because could put all my eggs in the basket that I wanted to put it in. And I could create from that space of abundance versus lack and like that balancing game that I was going
Yeah.
through.
Yeah.
And I said, I need to put everything I have in this. I invested in like the most top of the line gear. I did shoots for free. I did shoots for cheap. I did shoots for family and friends. I even interned with another photographer to learn more. I was on Photoshop. I was on other programs, just burying myself. My kids did not see me for a couple weeks. I was just buried in learning. And that was the feeling that gave me joy because every day I would get better. Every day someone would say, "You're getting so much better." Or they would give me critique, which I hated, but it helped, right? Critique fuels you. Critique is something that we all need, even if we don't like it. But I would say that that was my fuel in life was other people's critique of me. And that made me want to grow in that space. But then there comes a time where, all right, I've done everything I need to do now. Where's the next challenge?
Mhm.
Well, is it within my job or is it outside of my job? Right? Is it somewhere else? And I'm still figuring all of that out because I'm still in that space. But I'm honestly just listening to myself right now. And that has always served me. And I think there's something to be said for just not pushing and controlling everything in life and not worrying about what other people will say about you. Because I'm sure there's people that said, "Sherry, you're crazy. You make a lot of money and you're really good at it." But if it doesn't light you up, really sit with yourself. Can you see yourself doing this 10 years from now? Can you see yourself doing this forever? Because if the answer is no, then chances are there's something else calling you or there needs to be a change within what you're doing, right?
Absolutely. I think your story of, well, first of all, how you left the cake business to get into photography. And it's funny, it's like for you, it's like a 7, 8 year cycle, right? So you did the
Yeah,
cake
7 year itch.
business and then you were like, all right, I'm done with this. And then go asking the universe to bring you the next thing. I think that's such a great example because I think for any of you who are listening, whatever it is that you're desiring, whatever it is that you're really wanting, and maybe you're not even completely certain of what that looks like yet. But I think that if you just sit down and you ask yourself the question of like, what really lights me up? What am I good at? What are my values? But really just like trusting and asking the universe, just saying, hey, I'm ready for the next opportunity. And the biggest thing too, and Sherry touched on this, was like that surrender, but detaching yourself from how it needs to happen and when it needs to happen. Because I think it's very easy to get caught up with like manifestation, videos and out there where people are saying like, you can manifest stuff in a certain time, put a date, put a number down, right? And yes, in a lot of ways, that's true. You can. I have done the same, but have also learned that when you don't attach yourself to what the exact thing is, that you give yourself more room. Well, ultimately, you give the universe more room to bring stuff in, right? And, like, when this has nothing to do with me, like, pivoting into a new job or career or anything, but I do remember when for a lot of years I was saying, like, "I know eventually I'm gonna move to Toronto. I'm gonna move to Toronto." Yeah, actually, like, when my daughter was 2 years old, I lived in Toronto for 6 months with her father and I, and when I came back to New Brunswick, I said, "I'm gonna be back." Like, I knew I was gonna come
Mm.
back, right? I just didn't know when. And so just out of nowheres, knowing that I had put that out there into the universe, like that I knew one day eventually I wanted to live in Toronto, one day, just out of nowheres, I felt this like whisper. I felt this strong like knowing of like, it's time to move to Toronto. And it
Yeah.
wasn't like it's time to move to Toronto in 6 months or a year from now. It's like you got to move to Toronto, like so that you can you can like set up shop in September. So it was like 5 weeks from the moment that I decided that I was going to move to Toronto. I was in Toronto. And
Mhm.
going back to putting your intention out to the universe, whenever you're making a pivot or a transition, it's asking getting clear on what you need, because when you're clear on what
Yeah.
you need and what you want, you can ask for that and the universe will show up, but you also have to trust. You have to have so much strong, like, trust and unwavering faith and the ability to surrender and let go and knowing that it's all gonna come together. And so in those 5 weeks, all I kept doing was focusing on what it was that I needed to step into. So, like, the home, the neighborhood, the schools, job, everything that I needed to support me when I got to Toronto, I called that in. And there was no room for doubt. There was no room for it to go sideways. Like in my mind, I put it on my vision board. I wrote everything down and I would just look at it every day and I would just say, okay, it is. It like, it's already done. It's already happened.
Mhm.
It's already coming together. And I kid you not, everything lined up, but I didn't control the how. So when you let go of controlling how it has to come together, the universe will come in and line the
Yep.
people up, the opportunities, the situations, everything. Like, so it's going back to what Sherry was saying, really allowing yourself to surrender and to trust will really help you in those times of like transition, but definitely when you're pivoting into something. But the other thing too is like, how do you know when it's time to pivot, right? So like how
Mhm.
can you know for sure? Because I think there's a lot of fear that can be surrounded with, well, what if I leave this thing to try this thing, but it doesn't work out or I fail or it's a flop or it wasn't supposed to be the thing that I was supposed to do? Like, what if I make the wrong choice, right? There's all the different fears and doubts, which is normal. We all feel them, right?
Yeah.
But the biggest thing, like, ask yourself these questions. Like, number one, does this job, business, or career still feel aligned with who
Mhm.
I'm becoming? Right. So ask yourself
Yeah.
that. And then the second question you can ask is, and we touched on this, was, am I excited to wake up and do this work? Or do I feel
Mhm.
dread and resistance when I think about going into doing this work?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
finally, ask yourself, does this path support the lifestyle and values that I truly want? And you ask yourself those questions and you're going to get really, really honest with yourself. And it's going to give you a pretty good gauge of like, is this thing aligned? And then you have to have that courage to be able to say, hey, all right, it's time. And one other thing too that I want to share is we are so much more than the labels that
Right.
society gives us. We are so much more than being a parent. We are so much more than the job title that we hold. We are so much more than the business that we have. We are so much more than the mother, the daughter, like all the labels that we put on ourselves. You're so much more than that. And when
Yeah.
you strip all those labels away, who are you at your essence, at your absolute core? And know that that's who you truly are. Everything else is an experience of this life. That's it. And
Yeah.
when you can really, really feel into that, it makes it less scary to walk away from the people who don't serve us anymore, from
Mhm.
the jobs that don't serve us anymore, from the businesses that don't light us up anymore. It really truly allows us to walk away from the things that are no longer in alignment with who we're becoming.
I love that, yeah, and I think that's a great message, like, people can take away from this because you're right, our identity should not be tied to what we're doing, and the minute it is, you need to ask yourself, "Am I losing myself?" Right?
Yeah.
And one last thing is that yes, it's scary, fear is normal, but staying where you are is even scarier, right? I think that we have to we have to face the what because we're never going to see that light if we just don't, go forward a little step like a highway. You're on a highway, driving on the highway with the lights on. You can only see 2 feet in front of you. But if you keep driving, you see more and you see
Mhm.
more, right? So just be brave, to follow
Yeah.
that and you will get there. And we're here for you.
I love that. Let us know. We'd love to hear from you too. What are you feeling like you're outgrowing? What are you outgrowing right now? And where are you feeling called to stepping into? Share it with us. And we'd love to hear. So you can either comment below or subscribe to our newsletter and keep the conversation going. But whatever it is, just know that you're capable and you got this.
You got this. Bye, soul sister.
Bye for now.